Hello, everyone. Madeline Dale here with the Chapter Goddess, and today I have an excellent author for you guys to meet. His name is Michael, and he's going to tell us a little about himself and his work. So I'm going to let him take it away and give us a bit about himself.
Hey, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And you said Madeline, right?
Yes.
Okay, Madeline. I want to make sure I get the name right. Terrible with names, but yeah. So my this is my debut fiction novel, Keeper 829. I have done other writing in the past. I am a kind of serial entrepreneur. I have a family travel business. I am a content creator. I have a travel blog that's been up for a little over a year now. YouTube channel, and the first book I ever published was a nonfiction book. It's a travel culture guide that I did in September of 2021. So that was my first, hey, yay, I'm a published author. But then this one is my whole other persona. This is my passion project that I've been working on for 3 years, and really excited to talk about it and get out there. So.
Excellent. So go ahead and give us a little bit about the synopsis for this book.
So it is a dystopian novel, kind of sci-fi-esque. The interesting thing was I intended to write historical fiction because one of my favorite authors is Anne Rice, and I love history. I'm a huge history buff. So I initially wanted to do that, but the story kind of just took it away and kind of created itself. So there are a whole bunch of flashbacks in this book. So there is a historical fiction component in it as well. I wanted to make sure I got to add in some of my history loving into it. So the general idea of the story is it's based in 2098. So in the near future, a dystopian society where states have collapsed. It's become one unified, oppressive world order. So there's one whole dynamic of that. So it's kind of 1984-esque where you have a dystopian society all dealing with the repression of a major organization called the Institution. But what you add to it, the sci-fi component, is my concept of keepers. So keepers are biomimetic beings that have been present on Earth for millennium. So I date it all the way back to the transition from Neanderthals to Homo sapiens. So they were actually in this world. Keepers interdict in our existence to shape the way we have basically existed. So they have been operating in the shadows, unbeknownst to humans, throughout our entire existence. And there's also a cosmic war that's been going on between keepers and warders. So you'll get more of the detail with the book and that when you actually read it. But the basic idea is Nesha, my main character, is a keeper. And she has been there under what's called dark protocol because of this massive cosmic war that's been occurring. So she was placed on Earth. She understands general idea of her mission, but key to her character is that she was infected. So not infected, but she has a virus that was inserted into her batch that made her somewhat defective and separated from the central command system. So that prevented her from getting updates, and that made her, when these biomimetic beings come into a planet, they have two roads that they can diverge on. They can either become more robotic, or they can mirror in species entry mode, they can mirror the species that they are keeping or protecting. And without those updates, that's really what happened to Nesha. She became more human, while inside there are still robotic components of her. So biomimetic, if you're not familiar with that, is the concept of mimicking biology to basically optimize design. And that's most notable by the bullet train in Japan. It was modeled off of the Kingfisher with that narrow, what's it called? I don't know how to describe it, but that's the idea behind biomimicry. So my beings are extraterrestrial. They look like humans, but they're not humans. They mirror the species that they're keeping. And the overarching nefarious vision is that there's an organization called SAGE, and there's all caps SAGE, and you'll understand what that means when you read the book. But then that is run by 7 sages, and that's capital like sentence tense sages. And they all have their individual names and their individual roles and personalities. But the general idea is that they are doing genetic engineering. So they are creating these yields across the cosmos in order to preserve their way of life. They were a vulnerable society way back in their history, and they have taken over their civilization and are attempting to make themselves immortal. So they have established this process of creating homesteads where they create a society, they create an intelligent species, and then they extract the information they need. They extract resources, they extract genetic information, and they do this whole idea of where they're continuously building on their civilization. And then they ultimately will terminate this civilization and they will do a jump where that the best of the best in their civilization have now been, the higher tier will jump to this new system, use the resources, deplete it until, they're ready to jump again. So they're just continuously doing this, and humans have no idea that this is going on. Nesha only has a very minimal bit of understanding in her programming because of this virus that was implanted in her. So she's dealing with a whole bunch of human issues. So she's dealing with abandonment. She feels like her makers are someone who just sent her and left her. She's dealing with, loneliness, a lot of human issues that make her, a lot less robotic. So that I kind of rambled on that, but that's the general idea of the book. So
that's impressive. It sounds like you've put a lot of work into it. Did you have to do a lot of research to create this world for your characters?
Yes. Yeah. So I've actually had that question asked quite a few times, whether I'm new to the writing world. So I've been asked, are you a plotter or a pantser and all that? And if you aren't familiar with that, plotter is someone who really plans out your book, detailed all the way through. Pantser kind of people who just write. I'm in the middle. When it comes to actually writing, I just write. But I do a significant amount of research. I'm an academic at heart. I've been working on my master's program. I love learning. So the research component is a big aspect for me, and I do that very deliberately. And I also lean on a lot of my education in the past and a lot of stuff that I've learned and I've picked up along the way, including some of my professional experiences. So there's a lot of research that goes into it, but in terms of actually like plotting the storyline, I just go.
That's actually pretty awesome. I'm about the same way. I kind of do a rough outline when I write, but it always tends to veer way off in left field. So that is awesome, though, that you've put that much into it. So Nesha is a pretty unique character. Where did you get your idea for her?
So funny thing is, this story is very, very personal, and there are a whole bunch of contentious issues that readers. I did a reel on my Instagram where I said, "Hey, this book is not for you if," and pretty much anyone. The 30 seconds that I got into that reel was just, hey, if you were going to take offense to things, you may not want to read the book. Understand it is fiction, that there are real things and I'm discussing, but you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt and, make your own decisions. But so there are a lot of sociopolitical and geopolitical things that I talk about in the story. So the idea of the story came from my personal opinions in terms of character development. I started writing it when I was in a major transition in my life, and Nesha was actually mirrored off of my wife. And even to the point that physical description, like I described her at the very beginning as my wife. I described some clothes that she was wearing, her demeanor. But the funny thing is as I go along, there's another character that you'll meet named Gabriel. And those are the two primary characters, right? Nesha and Gabriel. Gabriel was mirrored off of me. He literally wore the shoes that I wore to my wedding. That intense in terms of physical description. But as they developed, and as I said, my story kind of just writes itself. My characters develop themselves. My characters switched big time. So toward the end, Nesha is really me. and Gabriel is a lot more my wife. So it in terms of personalities, I took it from real people and real experience. In terms of the idea of a keeper, I actually have no idea where that came from. Because I, like I said, I didn't intend on writing science fiction or anything with extraterrestrials or anything like that. Like I really have. I think the biggest thing is there's a whole lot of themes of like religious themes, and that was something I was going through at the time. So I am agnostic. I was raised Christian, so I've had a lot of kind of questions with my religion and my belief system, and I've struggled with that my whole life. So Nesha goes through that. So the keepers themselves actually, this is why I say take it with a grain of salt when you read it, because I write it as that the keepers created religion. The keepers created gods. The sages are literally named after some of our gods in various religions across the world. But she's still struggling with these existential problems of there's got to be a greater purpose. There's got to be a greater meaning. And that's what all religion is trying to find that purpose and that reason. So I think developing the keeper was kind of trying to come to grips with my existential questions and I guess, path.
That is really cool, actually. I like how you did that and tied that into that they created the gods. That's very fascinating. So with that, with you mentioning that you tied you and your wife into the characters, would you say you almost like immortalized yourselves by becoming the characters? If that makes sense.
I guess to a certain extent, but if you're not like, people are really only going to know it if they listen to an interview or talk to me about it. If they read the book, they're not going to know. I mean, unless you really know me, you're not going to know that that's me or my wife,
Yeah.
So I guess to an extent, to the people who are close to me and the people who know, yeah, I guess the answer would be yes.
Yeah, that is really cool. So you mentioned so for you guys watching the video, I tend to send a questionnaire to those that I interview, and it's posted on my blog if you want to check it out. In the questionnaire, you mentioned traveling a lot. Do you feel like that has shaped part of like your writing?
Absolutely. So traveling is a huge love of mine, one of my biggest passions, which is why I started a travel business as well. I think it gives you the most perspective of the world around you and is very transformative. That's why we actually took our kids, or my daughter is 9. I took her out of school and we do what's called world schooling, or we coin travel schooling. So we take her around and she learns from the world around her. So I think that's the best way to see the world and experience, humanity and just all the different cultures. In terms of my writing, as I said, I idolized Anne Rice, and I love the way she did her scene setting. And literally, it is, if you've ever read her stories, like you can go to those places in real life and see them. And
yeah,
feel all the stories that are happening because they're so vivid. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to do that. And I was like, how can I be? I didn't have the confidence. I was like, how can I write like that? And my wife was like, you have traveled all over the place. Anne Rice started by writing places that she lived in and she's used to. So she was like, just take your experience and write it. So literally every place in Keeper 829 is a place that I have been in, that I have experienced, and I am retelling it from my memory and my pictures and all that. So like I can take you to exact places and know this is where this happens in this book. And this is why I picked it. So traveling was very influential.
that is awesome. So did the pandemic, has it affected anything with your writing or your creativity?
Yeah, actually. So I incorporated, before the pandemic really took off. I had started my book before the pandemic, right? And I incorporated some sense of disease because that's just kind of normal in dystopian, trends, that there's going to be some sort of disease, there's going to be war, there's going to be all that stuff, right? So I incorporated this concept of there were 3 major pandemics that kind of led to the collapse of society. But I really didn't go too much in depth into it. What I did do when I was rewriting, so I wrote the first 10 chapters by hand. And then I started typing, and I think I was around chapter maybe 14 or 15 when we started getting, isolated. All the quarantines happened, all that stuff started picking up. And I was trying to restructure a scene, and I realized like I wanted to create the agents of the institution in a certain way and give them a certain image and separate them from everyone else. What I ended up doing was giving them all red face masks. So every member of the institution wears a red face mask. The reason being is because it's actually very nefarious, but so they use it as they use the pandemic and disease, they control it at this point, and they use it as a way of limiting population. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the institution, you are guarded, you are protected. But if you're not, they have done this whole propagandistic, thing of, hey, everything, society's been saved, you're safe, blah, blah, blah. But you're not. So they literally let people die from these diseases to manage population and to prevent revolution. So yeah, the pandemic actually influenced that a little bit, and I did incorporate that into some of my character design.
Wow, that is cool. Gosh. So the cover on this novel, did you have any say in its creation? Like, I noticed it's got a train on it with some graffiti. Did you pick out that image yourself, or was that a suggested one?
Yeah, I did the cover all by myself. I picked out this image. I picked it out specifically because of the travel component, and I liked the way it looked. Like the graffiti kind of gave it a dystopian feel for me. And then the sense that throughout the novel, Nesha is moving. She is constantly moving. There are some very pivotal moments that happen on a train. So yeah, and train is my favorite form of transportation as well. So yeah.
I like how it ties into the story too. And this is book 1. Do you have a plan of how many books are in this series?
Yeah, so the Keeper program is supposed to be 4 books. Yeah. My wife did tell me to. I tend to be someone who likes to set a plan and I stick with it. But she told me to, go with the 4-book plan, but be open in case it changes. So I'm open, but right now I do have all the titles planned out for the next 3 books. I've been working on book 2. I'm about halfway through with it. My goal is to be done writing the series by the end of this year, if possible. And at least publish book 2.
Sweet. You can do it. Just stick with it. So go ahead and tell our readers and our listeners where they can find you and your work.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a website, michaelcamarillobooks.com. There you can find everything and anything about the services I offer, because I also so I write, and then I offer professional services for writers as well, including web building, beta reading, proofreading. So you can find that on there. I have a shop as well where I have apparel that I put out. They have like quotes from the book and various existential things. It's kind of dark, but it's fun. And then I'm on Facebook at Michael Camarillo Books, Instagram at Michael Camarillo Books as well. I have a book club on Facebook as well that you can find at Camarillo Book Club. Yeah, and I'm starting up a YouTube channel. It's going to be at Michael Camarillo Books as well, but I haven't. It's there. You can go subscribe, but there's nothing there yet. So, yeah.
Sweet. And you guys, I'm going to have it.
My book. My book is it's available on Amazon right now. So in paperback, hardback, and Kindle, and then I'm on Amazon and Goodreads as well. So.
Sweet. And you guys, I'm going to have all his information in the description. Also, it'll be on my blog and in the comments for social media if you're checking this out, like on Instagram. All right. Thank you so much for being with me today, Michael.
Thank you for having me. It was great.